Hello everyone, we are back with a weekly video as promised. Once again exploring the wonderful world of Final Fantasy, continuing our adventure as a relatively new player, exploring Eorzea as we jump from expansion to expansion. Last time we covered over a lot of the first impression features of A Realm Reborn, but now it's time to jump into where the game really picks up, and that is Heavensward. Oh wait, first we have to thank our sponsor, this USB kill stick. What? Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's Raid Shadow Legends. Hey, where are you going? Don't you want to hear about? The graphics, God tier, so beautiful and well defined, especially for a mobile game, it makes you want to cry. But that's not all, as numerous challenges in the world of Raid awaits, including the Doom Tower. Storm forth into the tower and overcome foes and defeat hideous monsters that are trapped within here. Oh my god, what is that thing? Unlock brutal yet powerful champions such as Kale, a skilled mage with the power to rain poison on his foes. Seek out your own champion. Perhaps you fancy the undead horde and seek to recruit warriors from there. The game is also rampant with updates. A huge update this month is the Guardian Ring, a feature that includes a whole new faction guardian system, allowing you to get legendary champions that you missed and new ways to upgrade your favorite champions. Also, if that hasn't caught your attention, then perhaps this will. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code and you will get the epic new hero Konaru, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and an ancient shard so you can summon a champion as soon as you install. For the next 30 days only. Alright friend, you can go now. Thank you, mister. And don't forget to install Raid. Ah, the youth. Alright, let's talk about Heavensward now. Oh wait, first we have to talk about the 7th Astral Era quest, or in other words, the patch quests in between ARR and Heavensward. These are the story quests that transition you from expansion to expansion. You guys know how everyone says that ARR is a bit of, well, a slog to power through? Well, the patch quests are kind of no different. They can be a bit long, grueling, tedious, but as always, if you can overcome this part of the game, it is worth it. Also, you get to fight a giant cat, Good King Mogglmog himself, and it was such a crazy ass eye-opener really. I mean, up until this point, if you follow the story quest line, nothing has really been too intense. You can AFK through previous instances like Castrum. Lahabrea is honestly one of my favorite characters so far, but he turns out to be a punk in A Realm Reborn. Even the previous trials tied to the story weren't really hectic, but then you fight this giant cat and he actually kicks your ass. Why? Well, because from what I can remember, it was like one of the first times where mechanics actually really mattered and weren't as straightforward. Because if you kill the cats in the wrong order, well, death. It's also kind of funny because this isn't even the first group content that I struggled with. You guys know Cape Westwind? Yeah, well, if you guys don't, it is heavily memed on for how ridiculously easy it is. Whenever people queue up, they say things like, oh man, we got the hardest and longest trial. Somebody go over the mechanics, please. Put down the markers so we know where to stack. Mainly because the dude dies faster than Lahabrea and is completely lame-brained that it is a joke. Pathetic. There's even videos online of people speedrunning him for less than 2 seconds. Well, the first time that I did this, we actually wiped 3 times. I'm not joking. How, you may ask? Well, the tanks didn't tank, and so healers didn't heal, and DPS didn't DPS because we were dead. The 7th Astral Era quest could be rough aside from this though, I'm not gonna lie. However, the trials you eventually encounter, like Good King Mogglmog, the World Eater where you fight a giant serpent leviathan summoned by one of the beast tribes, and also the Krucial where you battle the Ascians yet again, does help to spice up the pacing quite a bit. What can I say? I am a sucker when it comes to the Ascian storyline. Ascian outfit on the online store when? Put down a petition, guys. Eventually, however, after a very numerous amount of quests, you will in fact make your way to Detroit. Ishgard, the city at war with badass dragoons constituting most of its military. Speaking of America, welcome to your right to the Second Amendment. Wield a hand cannon and do a majestic ballerina flip to increase the damage of your projectiles. God, I love how physics works. This is the Machinist class, one of 4 new classes introduced in Heavensward. Being an American, it's it's really hard to resist the temptation of not pulling out a gun every 2 seconds, so this remedies that. Being a Californian, it's very hard to resist the temptation of not setting off a pyrotechnic gender reveal device and setting the planes ablaze, so this flamethrower ability also solves that. Another class introduced with Heavensward is the Dark Knight. A lot of WoW players compare this to the Death Knight, except the difference here is that the Dark Knights go around willingly allowing darkness to envelop them, whereas Arthas goes around like, I stab you, you turn now, okay? You're basically a Death Knight obsessed with justice, kind of like Batman. These dark yet valiant knights bask in the darkness to empower themselves, seeking to deliver justice and protection to the people of Ishgard.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
Yes!
I like the Dark Knight. Their gameplay is pretty stale at first, but later on you do gain access to some spells with some pretty unique animations. Yes, I see pretty spell, I like the job. One thing I will say is that I like managing MP and weaving in spells and abilities between GCDs. Now, that's a problem I heard with Paladins, is that it can be stale and there's not too many off GCD spells, but that's just what I heard, I never played it. If you feel as though you want to main a tank with a fantasy of dark magic that has to manage more than just their health pool, I suggest trying Dark Knight. With the slower GCD in Final Fantasy, Dark Knight has a perfect pacing to it, as you have to manage your off GCD spells that require the use of managing your MP as well. It gives it a more fast-paced and busier feel to it. Although I heard Gunbreaker is also really fun. I need to test that though. I haven't touched Blue Mage, and we don't play healers here, so sorry. Astrologians heal by asking you if you're an Aquarius or something, I don't know. Now let's get going on the story. Heavensward. What an experience. From this point on, guys, there will be spoilers about Heavensward's story. I'm not gonna go over all of it because, you know, I don't have time for that. But I am going to be going over key plots, so if you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. Alright, let's get into it. This is a roided out expansion compared to A Realm Reborn. We have good dragons, bad dragons, kind old man, never mind, he's an absolute prick, a legion of knights that look cool but sound like T-Pain who stuck a blue yeti up his ass,
A god who knows not cessation, whose being is sustained by a millennium of fervent prayer, and the eye's nigh bottomless reservoir of ether.
What?
an alternate group of adventurers calling themselves the Warriors of Darkness, who oppose our own purpose as the Warriors of Light, the gameplay of what it's like to walk into the streets of England past midnight, and much more. Heavensward is when Final Fantasy truly begins to display its passion for the narrative. There's absolutely so much going on in the story that it's hard not to take an interest in it. It kind of reminds me of Arthas and the Scourge in World of Warcraft and how those events remain impactful all the way through to Wrath of the Lich King, and who are responsible for impacting so many other subplots and characters. So many people and things are affected by Heavensward's story. It doesn't seem to remain incubated in just a small environment without everlasting effects. The plot is dynamic, the characters interesting, and it's all free. It is insane how jam-packed the story is, and it's not like a certain game where you are trickle-fed tiny bits of the story every half a year that contributes almost nothing to the overarching plot, which sucks because it unfortunately provides a pretty significant disconnect to new WoW players or people who haven't been following Warcraft lore for the past decade. In Heavensward and Final Fantasy in general, the story is told to you in massive volumes as you level, and it's because of this that an enormous part of the community actually takes an interest into the story. People that I play with and have known for years that usually don't give a care about the lore in any game actually follow the story of Final Fantasy and watch the cutscenes when they play it. If Blizzard weaved in WoW's story this well into their game, I just wonder how many more people would take an interest into the story. All MMOs should not only focus on endgame and the leveling process, but the story is a key component towards establishing greater longevity within an MMO. Also, there's a lot more hype when I fight a character that I know actually has it coming, rather than like a random bat. The story in Heavensward is such a huge step up from ARR that it's honestly hard to put into words. You're entering a realm that has been at war with dragons for 1,000 years, but it turns out that the conflict is a lot less black and white than you would think. The dragons are not evil, and the man holding the highest seat of authority and power turns out to be deceitful and corrupt. What a shocker. To add on to this, the entire war was triggered due to the murder of Nidhogg's brood sister, Nidhogg being the main dragon that is villainized throughout the story for his constant attacks against Ishgard. But it turns out it's not for no reason, it's because in the past, King Thordan I and his knights attacked Nidhogg's brood sister with the intent of ripping out her eyes so that they can consume it and wield great power. Yeah, it's pretty gruesome. When Nidhogg found out, all possibility of a truce between man and dragon was thrown out the window, and he killed Thordan I and some of the knights. But you see, over time, Ishgard blurred out a lot of these details from the public and started rewriting and altering the history. History is told by the victors. Instead, Thordan and his knights were said to have perished honorably and without any malice in their hearts. However, when the truth of these circumstances was made public, Thordan VII evolved like a Pokemon, revealing his true colors, going through a Chancellor Palpatine to Darth Sidious metamorphosis, ultimately turning from an old man into a yoked out primal god king, with the hell-bent notion of ushering an age of... But at the expense of eradicating anyone who decides to oppose him. He turns into an absolute beast, but he killed my favorite Ascian Lahabrea, so you know he had to go down. This is only one plotline of the expansion. You think dragons are bad, but it turns out Nidhogg is doing what he does because Thordan I killed his brood sister. A betrayal masked by lies for countless years. A lie that Thordan VII knows about, but which ultimately leads him to continue to conceal the truth even after Nidhogg has been dealt with, resulting in the revelation of his desire for godhood at the expense of eradicating anyone who opposes him. Heavensward's story is jam-packed with so many hype moments that it really is like watching an anime. And unlike another certain game where the cutscenes have jankier animations than Warcraft 3, the original itself, Final Fantasy does an excellent job with executing its in-game cutscenes. The quality is top-notch, the story is solid and filled with so much content that I've barely scratched the surface of it right here. And honestly, if you're debating still playing Heavensward, do it. It's free. Power through ARR and your reward will be killing this old man. Worth it. There's so many other great things about the story to talk about. The Ascians, who are my personal favorite part of the overarching narrative of Final Fantasy, and how they are essentially part of a former, larger ancient race that worked behind the scenes to manipulate and influence a ton of events to progress the will of their deity, the primal Zodiarch, who is pretty much like the embodiment of darkness. A lot of the events in Final Fantasy are rooted from Ascian influence, which reminds me a lot of when World of Warcraft lore was good, and how the old gods seemingly were ruthlessly cunning with the power to wreak havoc on the mortal world in order to facilitate the carrying out of their will. I might also be a bit biased, you know, since they have really dripped out robes and also really good actors. I love me some good voice acting and some supreme drip. Tying in with our previous discussion about the story is how solid the dungeons and trials are come this expansion. Whereas trials in A Realm Reborn were alright, nothing all too mind-blowing, and you know, also served to blind your retinas with literally any mechanic, Heavensward's trials are amazing, and they still serve to blind your retinas with literally any mechanic. Antagonists that have huge build-up in the story serve as bosses in dungeons or trials for you to take out, making it seem like a pretty momentous occasion when not only are you fighting the guy whose story you've been following for the past few days or weeks, but you also get to experience the intense fight paired up with the phenomenal visuals. That is, if you're wearing sunglasses. This guy, who is either misunderstood or has it coming, is now right in front of you. All of his past deeds and recent transgressions are so fresh in your mind as you ready yourself to do battle with them. Also, it really helps when the music is just so freaking good. Heavensward music is like, how do I put it? A Realm Reborn music is like listening to your uncle at karaoke night, while Heavensward music is like being in Coachella. Not saying A Realm Reborn music is bad by any standard, but Heavensward, man, you can really tell that they poured forth a lot of passion into this expansion. Like fighting Nidhogg and seeing him transform from his dragon appearance to the Dragoon Estinian state with the music blasting in the back is probably one of the most hype moments I've experienced in my recent years of gaming in an MMO. Like, how cool is that? Although the Nidhogg storyline is one of my personal favorites, so I may be a bit biased, and I'm gonna be honest, the bar for hype moments in MMOs recently also hasn't exactly been set too high. Another thing I will say that doesn't exactly pertain to just Heavensward, but I still want to mention it anyway, is how difficult the dungeons and trials get as you progress from expansion to expansion. I mean, of course it's to be expected as player skill level has adapted and risen over the years, but man, the dungeons and trials you are introduced to in the MSQ later are so much harder in like Shadowbringers than they are in like, say, Heavensward. It's really mind-blowing, and we're just talking about the trials and dungeons from the story too, not even the true endgame raid content on the highest difficulty. That being said, the first time I fought Nidhogg, we did wipe like 4 times, but I promise you it wasn't because it was hard, and it wasn't my fault. The damn tanks didn't have their tank presence on, and the ads literally smacked us into oblivion. I think the reason why I personally like the story so much is because there's so much loss on all sides and no one is truly completely evil. No side truly gains from all of the chaos. They're not completely one-dimensional, not even these guys. Even when you defeat the so-called villains, not only are you left with the question of was it the right call, but even the characters doubt themselves as well. Estinian's whole goal was to slay Nidhogg, but when he does it, he says that there's a little satisfaction in it after discovering the truth about Nidhogg's backstory. There's a lot of other plot lines both in Heavensward and the expansions far after that really paint the picture that amidst all the chaos, does anyone truly win? And I think that's the best way to paint a story. Not some half-naked King Neptune that even after a year of his shenanigans, we still don't really know his plan or what he's up to or if it makes sense, but instead, large volumes of the story being told directly through the leveling and story process and patch quests thereafter that have you sitting back and thinking, damn, I'm not a dude who was looking to get into this game for the story, but damn. I think the best part about Heavensward though is how it motivated me to play a Dragoon. Holy hell, they were boring when leveling with an ARR, but they really picked up in Heavensward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringers and have become one of my favorite jobs by far. So thank you, Estinian, for being so badass that you motivated me to level my Dragoon to max level. Also, if I can't get Ascian drip, at least I can get some Dragoon drip. When it comes to the dungeons, Heavensward dungeons, in my opinion, are a lot more badass than A Realm Reborn's, mainly because, as I stated before, A Realm Reborn starts kind of slow, whereas Heavensward has you fighting cool-ass enemies mainly throughout, like Nidhogg himself. The fights themselves are also a step up in terms of mechanics. Now you not only need to look out for danger on the ground, but you also gotta look out for danger on the ground while slipping. Don't worry, one day I'll get used to it. I think the best part about unlocking these these dungeons though is that they add more choices into the duty roulette pool so that when I queue for a random duty, it lessens the chance that I'll get Snow Cloak. Now I don't mind that dungeon at all, but the music for that place does sound like the ambience at a happy ending massage parlor, and it could get kind of tiresome. As for Ishgard, the first city that you're introduced to in Heavensward, it's really nice. It has that cold and isolated feel to it that kind of reminds me a bit of the thematics of Skyrim. The dragons may influence that a little bit. The cathedral is a towering behemoth of an architectural phenomenon, and standing at elevated vantage points while in my dragoon gear makes me feel badass. Even if I do have the agility of somebody who's wasted whenever I attempt to leap of faith.
Can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
My only advice is just don't walk the streets of Ishgard alone, or even if you are with people. But still, I must say, nothing can beat the Lalafell bands of New Gridania. As always, the community in Final Fantasy is really nice and welcoming. Hell, even while I was just queued for Cape Westwind to record, people were just super warm and nice. Although none of them gave me a commendation at the end, so I guess yeah, the community can be kinda toxic. When I went into Limsa, I saw people celebrating and engaging in holiday festivities. You're never too old to celebrate Halloween, although I wouldn't trust any candy a Lalafell were to give me. Don't trust the evil potato. I also ran into this really flashy fellow who was patrolling around Limsa for over an hour. So I decided to do the only rational thing in the situation. I decided to follow him and mirror his every movement as I waited for my friends to queue us up for a duty. He eventually caught on to this, gave me a hug, and then hit me up with this absolutely enormous wall of text. Completely caught off guard, I literally did not know what to do or how to respond. I also didn't even read all of the text, so I said this in response:
No thank you, I don't want any Girl Scout cookies.
I then ran away because things got awkward. This was the Heavensward experience, y'all, or at least my Heavensward experience. A great expansion with a solid story and with badass PvE content that is a huge step up from a realm reborn. But even with how much I like Heavensward, I still think Shadowbringers is much better. But that is a story for another time. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing and liking the video and be ready for daily uploads. Yeah. Also join the Discord if you guys are trying to meet people in the community. Link is in the description. Alright guys, I'll see you in tomorrow's video.